On the surface, they were the envy of all. Other residents of Banana Island whispered about the Williamses, the sudden moguls in their midst, about the young couple's almost supernatural rise to wealth. Some said James must have discovered oil on family land, or that a foreign investor backed him, or he had a powerful godfather. The couple themselves never spoke of the true origin. How could they? Their wealth was drenched in blood. As time passed, strange occurrences began to follow them like a shadow, unnoticed by outsiders, but impossible for Grace and James to ignore. It started subtly, the sound of childish giggles echoing through the hallways of their mansion when no children were around. Grace would be reading in the lavish living room and swear she saw a small figure dart past the doorway. But when she looked, nothing was there. Sometimes, late at night, James would wake up to the sensation of little hands tugging at his feet, only to find empty air. One evening, during a dinner party on their terrace, Grace almost dropped a tray of champagne flutes when she glanced at a guest's face, and instead saw David standing there, his neck gashed and eyes accusatory. She blinked, and the vision was gone. Just a flash, enough for the guest to ask if she was all right. Grace plastered on a smile and nodded, heart hammering. The nightmares grew worse for both of them. James dreamed of the children crying and calling out to him from a dark well. Grace dreamed of Emma wandering alone, drenched from rain and whispering, "Mommy, why won't you let me come home?" They would wake in cold sweats, sometimes screaming. In those nights, they clung to each other tightly in their huge, luxurious bed, whispering prayers to a God they had betrayed, begging for forgiveness, or at least for the visions to stop. The heavens remained silent as before. One humid night, a year and a half into their new life, Grace awoke to the sound of humming. She bolted upright. It was that same lullaby, the Yoruba lullaby the old woman had hummed, echoing through the marble halls. The bedroom door was ajar. She was sure she'd closed it. Fear seized her. For a moment she was back at that clearing, hearing the drum and lullaby under the dark sky. Grace reached over to wake James, but his side of the bed was empty. Panicking, she slipped on a robe and hurried out into the corridor. The hum floated in the air, directionless. "James?" she called softly. No answer. The house felt impossibly large around her, shadows dancing as she passed tall windows showcasing the moonlit lawn. She found James downstairs in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a half-empty bottle of scotch. He was drunk, tears streaming down his face. The patio doors were wide open, and beyond them the lagoon waters shimmered under the moon. "I heard them again," he slurred as Grace approached. His eyes were red, haunted. "I heard the kids laughing. They were out there in the garden. I swear I saw David by the mango tree." He gestured toward the yard with the bottle. Grace felt a chill. She gently took the bottle from his hand and set it aside, kneeling next to him. "James, it's in our heads," she said, though she wasn't sure at all. "We're just imagining them." James turned to her with sudden anger. "Imagining?" he barked, standing unsteadily. "Grace, they are here. Maybe not flesh, but they're spirits. They won't leave. We damned ourselves. His voice broke into a sob, and he gripped the edge of the table. "I can't live like this. I'm not even a man anymore." He was sobbing hard now, and Grace wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing her face into his back. She knew what he meant by not a man. Since that ritual, something in James changed physically too. He had been rendered impotent. It was part of the price, though they never spoke of it. And Grace's own wound ensured she would never carry another child. Those truths weighed heavily, unspoken ghosts on top of the literal ones. "We have everything we ever wanted, but nothing that truly mattered," James choked out. "This money is cursed. I'd give it all back to hold them again, Grace. I'd give my life to undo that night." Grace closed her eyes, tears wetting his thin t-shirt. She wanted to echo his words, but it was futile. The past was an irreversible stain. "We must carry it," she whispered. "This is our punishment." Their whispered confessions were interrupted by a sudden pounding on the front door. Both of them jolted, startled. It was 2 a.m. Who could possibly be at the door of a Banana Island mansion at this hour? The estate's security gate should have prevented any such disturbances. James, still swaying with drink, pulled away from Grace and made his way to the foyer with her following anxiously. He opened the heavy door, and bright flashlight beams from outside blinded them both. "Mr. Williams?" a harsh voice demanded. "Mr. James Williams?" James raised a hand against the light. "Who is asking?" "Lagos State Police. We have a warrant for your arrest." Grace's heart plummeted to her knees. She gripped James's arm. "Arrest? What? On what charge?" Uniformed officers flooded into the foyer. Their stern faces meant business. The lead officer stepped forward, holding a document. "We received credible information connecting Mr. Williams to ritual activities and the disappearance of 2 children in Ayobo 2 years ago." He glanced at Grace with a mixture of apology and judgment. "We will need you to come with us as well, ma'am, for questioning." For a moment, everything went dizzy for Grace. How had they found out? Who told them? The couple had been so careful to bury the past. Had the old woman betrayed them? Or an accomplice with a guilty conscience? Or, Grace thought wildly, was it the children themselves crying out for justice? She felt faint. James surprised her by lifting his chin and stepping forward, suddenly steady. "I understand," he said quietly. He turned to Grace, his eyes filled with sorrow and a glint of something like relief. "It's okay," he murmured. He then reached out and gently removed Grace's wedding ring from her finger. She gasped softly in confusion. He placed the ring in her palm and closed her fingers around it. "Keep everything. Let me bear this," he whispered quickly, under his breath. Before she could protest, he kissed her forehead, then faced the police. "I'll cooperate," he said louder, "but please leave my wife out of it. She knew nothing of what I did." "James, what are you saying?" Grace cried, reaching for him. "Was he taking all the blame?" He gave a tiny shake of his head, signaling her to stay quiet. The police separated them, one officer holding Grace back firmly but not unkindly as she started sobbing and pleading that they had it wrong. James was handcuffed. Grace watched, numb and trembling, as they led him out into the night. The blue lights of the police truck cast spinning shadows across their manicured lawn and the ornate fountain at the driveway, a grotesque contrast to the chaos unfolding. She rode with them to the station, though for the first few hours she was kept in a separate room. Dawn was breaking by the time they questioned her. Grace had tried to gather her wits, to think of a story, but she found she didn't have the will or ability to lie anymore. In halting, pained words, she confessed nearly everything to the detective. The words poured out between tears. The poverty, the meeting with the woman, the pact, the ritual, the unimaginable sacrifices, the wealth, the hauntings. It sounded insane even to her own ears, a tale straight out of a Nollywood horror film. The detective's face remained impassive, but she caught his hand trembling when she described how they killed their children. He left the room in silence after she finished, locking her in. She curled into a corner of the chair, rocking, feeling emptier than she ever had. Perhaps they would hang her for this, she thought dully. And perhaps that was no more than she deserved. Hours passed. Finally, an officer opened the door. "Madam, you are free to go home," he said, almost grudgingly. Grace looked up, disbelieving. What? How?" The officer avoided her eyes. "Your husband took full responsibility. He claimed he alone performed the act, that you were unaware. And there's not enough evidence to charge you, apparently." A frown flickered on his face as if he personally doubted her innocence. But orders were orders. They hadn't found the remains of the children. The bodies were presumably disposed of by the cult, leaving little for forensic proof beyond testimony. Perhaps the old woman and others had vanished, leaving only James's partial confession. Grace realized James must have said he acted alone. Maybe that she only found out afterward. Oh, James. Even after all this, he tried to save her. She stepped out of the station into the harsh midday sun. Paparazzi and journalists were swarming outside, having caught wind that a Banana Island big shot was arrested for rituals. As soon as Grace appeared, cameras flashed and a chaos of voices barraged her with questions. "Mrs. Williams, is it true your husband killed children for money? Madam, did you know about the rituals? Are you involved? Is this how you funded your lifestyle?" The words were knives, each one stabbing into her shame. Grace's head spun. She shoved through the crowd without a word, tears blinding her, and managed to get into the back of a taxi that her driver, loyal and worried, had waiting once news broke. The ride back to Banana Island was a blur of misery. James remained in custody, awaiting trial for murder and human sacrifice. The news spread like wildfire. By evening, their names were the top headline on television and social media. Neighbors who once clinked champagne glasses with them now looked upon Grace with horror and disgust. Some staff quit immediately. Others stayed only out of morbid curiosity or pity. Grace wandered the huge, empty mansion like a ghost, her mind unraveling. She kept expecting to see James come around a corner, smiling and telling her it was all a nightmare they'd wake up from. Instead, silence answered. That night she sat on the floor of what had been the children's room, a guest room they'd decorated in hopes that maybe one day they'd adopt or foster a child to fill the void. A hope now shattered. She rocked back and forth, clutching the rag doll that had been Emma's, keening softly. 2 days later, news came from the prison. James was dead. They found him at dawn in his cell. The official report was heart failure, but the guard who called Grace, a kindly man who pitied her, confided that inmates in neighboring cells heard James screaming in the early morning hours. "He was screaming the names of your children, Ma," the guard said quietly over the phone. "They said he was shrieking and begging for forgiveness, then he just stopped. They found him lifeless. There's no sign of harm. It's like he just gave out." Grace thanked the guard numbly and hung up. James was gone. Her partner in life, in crime, in punishment, gone. She was utterly alone now, left to carry the burden of what they had done. Something in Grace's mind splintered at that knowledge, a final break from reality that she'd been teetering on since that dreadful night. At midnight, exactly 2 years to the day since they made the pact, residents of Banana Island saw a strange sight. Mrs. Williams, once the graceful, soft-spoken lady of that grand white mansion, was wandering the streets barefoot in her nightdress. Grace walked with no destination, eyes wide and wild, hair disheveled, the once impeccably groomed curls now frizzed and tangled. In her arms, she clutched a rag doll and a small toy car, holding them close as if they were real babies. Now and then she'd pause under a street lamp and whisper lullabies to the doll. Or she would shout suddenly into the dark, "Emma! David! Come inside! It's raining!" Even though the night was dry and clear, guards tried gently to escort her back home, thinking her sleepwalking or grief-stricken, but she fought them off with surprising strength, screaming, "I have to find my children. They're here. I know they're here somewhere." She began laughing at things only she could see. Neighbors watching from balconies felt a chill. The laugh didn't sound entirely human. Some swore it echoed, as if more voices laughed with her. Others said when she turned toward them, For an instant they saw the gaunt face of an old woman superimposed over hers, shawl blowing in an unseen wind. By morning, Grace was still roaming, her bare feet bleeding from stepping on sharp gravel and broken glass, leaving a trail of red droplets on the pristine asphalt of the island roads. The sun rose on Banana Island, glinting off the windows of multi-million-dollar mansions and expensive cars, but its warmth did not reach the cold shadow that hung over the Williams estate. Grace Williams, once a poor cleaner from Ayobo, then a queen of wealth, now a mad wretch, wandered those manicured streets with empty eyes. In her fractured mind, she was back in Ayobo, holding her children's hands, leading them to school, or feeding them a warm meal. At times she shrieked at phantoms, yelling, "Take me instead! Give them back!" startling the morning joggers. Eventually, some sympathetic neighbors and remaining staff managed to corner her gently. They took her to a hospital, where doctors sedated her broken mind. But even heavily drugged, she muttered to the nurses about deals and blood, and how the wealth must be given away or burned. Within days, the once opulent house was seized by authorities, and all that money seemed to evaporate. Lawyers' fees, government confiscations, opportunists taking what they could. It was as if the wealth itself had only been a mirage that dispersed now that its purpose was done. No one ever saw the old mysterious woman again, nor any of the cult members. It was as if the darkness that touched the Williamses had slithered back into the depths, content with the ruin left behind. Sometimes, late at night, Banana Island guards on patrol would see a lone figure standing by the lagoon behind the now empty Williams mansion. A woman in a hospital gown, long hair loose, humming a Yoruba lullaby to the waters. If approached, she would vanish, leaving only footprints in the damp sand. They say Grace still wanders Banana Island to this day, not as the elegant, wealthy lady she became, but as a lost soul more broken than she ever was in poverty. Some nights, residents hear her wailing in the distance, a sound so full of regret and pain that it chills the blood. In the end, the couple found what they sought. They rose from abject poverty to extreme wealth. But the cost of their paradise was paid in innocent blood and eternal sorrow. And what they gained, they could not truly enjoy, for the shadows of their sacrifice clung to them until it destroyed them. Banana Island remains a paradise for the rich, but if you walk its quiet, flower-lined streets at night, you might glimpse a gaunt, distant-eyed woman clutching a rag doll, and you might hear her whisper to the darkness, "Emma, David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," as the night breeze carries her words away, a chilling reminder that some prices are too high and some wounds never heal. Thank you so much for watching this story on Luxury Stories 24/7. We hope it touched your heart and taught you something special. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing and emotional stories every day. We would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you learn? What touched you the most? Until next time, keep showing love, stay kind, and remember, every story has a lesson.